I'm Mark Walker, and I've been in Nigeria for 10 years now. I started my own reform journey in Jigawa State. I then moved on to another reform journey in Kaduna State, where I acquired a dog from Jos and a wife from Benue. I carried on my reform journey, moving further south to Abuja, where I acquired a daughter. And now, finally, in my reform journey, I am the National Programme Manager of the SPARC programme.
First of all, I'm not an Igbo. My husband is not from Benue, and I don't have a dog from Jos. But I am a northern woman in reforms, and I've been doing this both at federal and state level for over 10 years. My name is Hadiza Elayo, and I'm Mark's deputy. Good morning.
So our intention this morning is to briefly share with you some of what SPARC has achieved, what we have learned, how we have gone about our business, and explain a little bit about our partnership for reform in Nigeria. And Hadiza, now that we know each other, maybe we can begin that journey by explaining how SPARC was born in the first place.
Okay, so SPARC was born from lessons we learned from our previous program, which was the state and local government program. I think the fundamental lesson we learned was that reforms needed a structured approach. Mark, I guess you want to put that in English, what structured approach means.
Perhaps a little bit. SPARC innovated with state governments to undertake self-assessments for the first time in Nigeria of the governance framework. And those self-assessments were used to develop locally driven reform programs. Reforms were then implemented in partnership, and every single year, progress around the reform program was reviewed in an iterative planning cycle that allowed for flexibility and creativity. And year-on-year progress. So Hadiza, maybe we can talk a little bit about how the progress began, or what the progress was like in the early years.
Yeah, I think progress was made quite early on in terms of, changing or developing approaches to how government did business. So for instance, we went about developing guidelines, say for mandate mapping. We looked at developing guidelines for sector strategies and linking them to better budgets, how people could then develop better budgets, and do things differently. However, that just sounds like a lot of transactional stuff filled with paper. So perhaps Mark should tell you a little bit about what this means to real people.
I think the sea change in our journey really happened when state governments and our partners actually began to apply changes, actually transform the machinery of government, actually change real behaviours. And at the end of the day, for us, I think governance reform really is about transforming the machinery of government to better serve the people. And that's really about delivery, which is money and people. Money and people, better directed to serve Nigerian people. But that sounds like a concept as well. Maybe we should become a bit more practical with a few examples, Hadiza.
Yeah, and not to take away the shine for our very prestigious state partners who will be telling us themselves, but we've had some concrete examples. So for instance, better plans linked to budgets. An example is Kaduna State, where the recently launched SDP was very linked to the budget. Or for instance, where Enugu State showed clear budget realism with a 12% reduction from the previous year's budget. We've had improved budget executions, for instance in Jigawa, where it's above 90%. And we've got reduced budget variances throughout most of our states, and good examples are Lagos, Anambra, and Niger. Over time, we've seen better improvements in health and education expenditures. We've seen improvements in transparency and accountability, and we've seen better intergovernmental links. So, for instance, supporting states to access more funds using the conditional grant scheme. And of course, supporting the Nigerian Governors Forum to help with things like eradication of polio and the state peer review mechanism. However, I have to say that these results have not come easy. Just saying them alone is wearing me out. Huh?
Indeed, it has been a long journey, 7 years. And along the path, many, many course adjustments.
Clearly from the hectic picture behind.
Indeed. One of the biggest course adjustments for SPARC was around 2012 when the programme expanded from supporting 5 original states to supporting 10 very, very different states. And in our journey together, this journey of partnership for reform, we've learned a number of key big lessons that we'd like to share with you.
Indeed. I think one of our biggest lessons that we learned is that political engagement and political leadership is critical. I see a lot of nods, so people agree with me.
Reform is not just a technical issue, it is fundamentally political. And there are winners and losers. Political leadership needs to be engaged to make sure that any changes being thought about actually have traction. Any reform needs fertile ground, and that fertile ground can only really come from political commitment.
Yes, a lot of times, or rather, we've had teams living inside government. So for instance, we've got most of our landlords sitting here, where we've actively rolled up our sleeves. Our teams are embedded in state government, supporting those who are responsible for reforms, building capacity, basically going along the journey of reform together. We've supported the building of local reform institutions. I think BPSRs from all over states, all the other states will be here. And in a recent thing I heard from the head of service of the Yobe, I don't know if he's here. Are you here, head of service? Oh, great. Okay, so he said outsiders can help, but only insiders can do the job. And so, another lesson we learned was that flexibility, responsiveness, and innovation ensure progress. Mark?
Working to a blueprint never works. Reform is a journey that needs constant changes, taking advantage of opportunities, stopping things that aren't working, learning from others, adapting, generating local solutions to local problems. Every state and every partner is different. Every state and every partner needs a different approach. Varying the pace, going faster sometimes, going slower at other times. Anticipating, building survival strategies, being clever. We tried to be clever with SPARC before the elections, for example, thinking politically, by establishing a special mechanism that states could access after the elections to implement new initiatives with new administrations. So deliberately building in flexibility and anticipating possible obstacles and creating mechanisms that will allow for constant change and adjustment.
I think what Mark is just trying to say in a nutshell is that we are able to provide technical solutions tailored to locally identified challenges as opposed to generic solutions. So for instance, we developed what we call the Public Financial Management Database for our 10 states, and the World Bank have taken that forward now. So we have all government information on budgets and accounts in one big database, and that helps us to clearly understand what government has promised and what the actual delivery is, to be able to identify where the loopholes are for further support. I think one of my favorite lessons that we learned during the SPARC time is that partnerships leverage greater change.
We're really talking about something as simple as many hands pushing in the same direction. SPARC never would have got anywhere if SPARC had been pushing in one direction and governments were pushing in another. We'd never have got anywhere if reform was pushing in one direction within the executive and pushing in another direction from the legislature. We never would have got anywhere if we had not had partnerships between the various programs that DFID have in states. And it's really that the many hands pushing in one direction that inspired us to invite so many partners to share this day of expanding horizons. And fundamentally, these partners have all been part of a process of generating the useful tools and resources that others can now adapt and adopt and apply for their own use. Like, for example, the PFM suite of tools that helps you create better budgets, or the planning suite, which helps you create better state development plans or sector strategies, or the human resource suite that helps us to manage the civil service better. And we're going to hear from partners today on how to leverage greater change and how to apply, or how they have applied, all of these tools which are commonly held within the SPARC Resource Centre now.
Yes, and that's why in our next series of sessions we will hear directly from federal and state partners about how they are doing business differently and making a difference in the lives of people.
The construction under progress symbol, I think, says it all, to be quite honest. We fully recognise that the journey is not yet over. And it really is work in progress.
As we said, the job is not yet done. It's really a difficult journey ahead, but I'm sure that to be able to embed real change and deliver results for all Nigerians, we have to work together.
And that's why we invite you to join with us here today, celebrating the progress that has been made as the horizon expands towards our collective sustained gains, and also embarking on a new chapter in our reform journey together. Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark Walker. Thank you very much, Hadiza. I think the key sentence here would be that this is work in progress. Nigeria needs what SPARC is doing. Given what is happening in the country, you know why, you can understand why the messages from SPARC would resonate very well. We need to build our institutions, we need to have good governance.